Welcome to these gentle, soothing stories for sleep. I am so glad that you are here. Whether you are preparing to drift off into dreams, relaxing after a long and winding day, or simply seeking a quiet and thoughtful companion in this moment, you have found a safe and peaceful place. Tonight, we will embark on a journey of the mind, a thought experiment wrapped in the softest velvet of scientific curiosity. We will imagine something impossible, something extraordinary, and watch it unfold with a gentle and understanding heart. Before we begin our story, I'd love to know where you are listening from tonight, or perhaps how your day has been. Please feel free to leave a quiet comment below. Wherever you are, I hope you are feeling comfortable, relaxed, and ready to explore something truly wondrous. And if you find these soothing scientific journeys to be a pleasant companion, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It helps more souls who are searching for this kind of peace find their way here. And now, let us begin. It begins not with a bang, nor a roar, nor any sound at all, but with a feeling. Imagine you are standing in a quiet field of tall, golden grass under a vast and perfect sky. There is a sensation on your cheek, a coolness that feels like the softest, most ethereal of breezes, yet not a single blade of grass around you stirs. It is a phantom wind, a current moving without moving the air, and this is the very first whisper of the long goodbye. It is the feeling of the outermost, most tenuous layer of our world, the exosphere, finally letting go. This is the place where our atmosphere doesn't truly end, but slowly, molecule by molecule, fades into the infinite vacuum of space. And in our story, on this impossible day, that fading has become a sudden departure, a silent mass exodus of gas molecules, leaving the gentle pull of Earth's gravity for the last time. In the first few minutes, the change is almost imperceptible, a subtle shift in the quality of the world that you might feel more in your soul than with your senses. The sky, for instance, seems to be a deeper, more impossibly perfect shade of blue, a piercing sapphire that feels purer than any sky you have ever seen. The silence, too, has a new quality to it. It is not merely an absence of noise, but a deep and profound quiet that seems to have a presence of its own, a heavy, velvet curtain falling over the world. High above, you notice a flock of birds, perhaps swallows or swifts, and their flight seems different. They are not soaring with their usual effortless grace, but seem to be working harder, their movements tinged with a subtle awkwardness, a slight wobble in their normally perfect arcs. They are discovering, before we are, that the very substance that holds them aloft, the air itself, is growing thinner, less supportive, turning from a dense, buoyant ocean into a shallow, uncertain stream. This invisible ocean is what we call atmospheric pressure, and it is the most profound and intimate physical relationship we have with our planet, yet one we almost never acknowledge. At sea level, the column of air stretching from the top of your head to the edge of space presses down on you with a weight of about 14.7 pounds on every single square inch of your body. Imagine a comforting, heavy blanket, woven from nitrogen and oxygen, argon, and a whisper of other gases, wrapped around the entire planet, holding everything in place with a firm but gentle embrace. This pressure is not a burden. It is the very thing that allows our world to be what it is. It is this pressure that keeps the water in our oceans and in our bodies in a placid liquid state. It provides the medium for the clouds to float, for the winds to blow, and for the birds to fly. Our world, our life, is perfectly calibrated to this specific weight, this constant, invisible hug from our sky. Our atmosphere is not a single uniform thing, but a series of beautiful concentric layers, like the delicate skins of an onion. We live our entire lives in the very first layer, the troposphere, the warm, moist, weather-filled realm that extends about 10 kilometers up. This is where all the clouds are born, where all the rains fall, where all of life as we know it breathes and sighs. Above that lies the calm stratosphere, home to the precious ozone layer, a shield of O3 molecules that guards us from the sun's harshest radiation. Then comes the mesosphere, where meteors burn up in brilliant, fleeting streaks of light. And above that, the intensely hot but incredibly thin thermosphere, where the aurorae dance their silent, shimmering ballet. And finally, at the very edge of everything, is the exosphere, where our story begins. In this outermost layer, the air is so thin that molecules of gas can travel for kilometers without bumping into one another, and it is from here that they have begun their final, silent journey away from Earth. As this process accelerates, cascading down through the layers, the birds feel it first in the thinning air that no longer cradles their wings so perfectly. That subtle change in the air, the one that so confuses the effortless flight of a bird, is also beginning to change the very nature of sound, weaving a new and deeply unnerving quiet across the land. Why does the world sound so muffled all of a sudden? As if every corner of the landscape has been filled with the softest, sound-absorbing cotton. You cup a hand to your ear, listening, and the familiar sounds of the world seem to be losing their richness, their character. The gentle rustle of leaves in a distant tree sounds thin and brittle, like crumbling paper. The cheerful chirp of a cricket nearby seems strangely flat, as if its song has lost all of its echo and resonance. You try to call out to someone, perhaps a friend across the field, but your voice feels trapped in your own throat. The sound leaves your lips, but seems to travel only a few feet before it simply dissolves into the strange, heavy silence. The familiar, deep rumble of a distant train on the horizon, a sound that has marked the passing of the hours for your entire life, never arrives. The world is not just becoming quiet, it is losing its ability to transmit its own voice. We are watching and listening as our planet transforms into a silent film, a beautiful but heartbreaking pantomime of a world that once sang with life. The birds, now struggling in the thin air, open their beaks to sing their alarm, but no song emerges. They are calling out into a gathering void, their notes vanishing the moment they are created. This profound and deepening silence is perhaps the most immediately isolating and unnerving sensation of all, as it severs our most ancient connection to the world around us, the simple, profound act of hearing. The science behind this growing silence is as simple as it is absolute. Sound, in its purest form, is not a thing in itself, but a vibration, a wave of energy traveling through a medium. Imagine dropping a small stone into a perfectly still, clear pond. From the point of impact, ripples spread outwards, elegant, concentric circles of energy that disturb the water. Sound travels through the air in precisely the same way. When a cricket chirps or you speak a word, your vocal cords or the cricket's wings create vibrations. These vibrations push against the nearby molecules of air, the nitrogen, the oxygen, and create a wave of compression and rarefaction, a pressure wave that travels outwards, like the ripple in the pond. This wave travels through the air until it reaches another object, like your eardrum, causing it to vibrate in sympathy, a vibration that your brain then miraculously interprets as sound. The air, this invisible, gaseous ocean we live in, is the pond. And in our story, on this impossible day, that pond is rapidly drying up. As the atmosphere thins, there are fewer and fewer molecules of air packed together. The distance between them grows larger and larger, and it becomes more and more difficult for a vibration to pass from one molecule to the next. The ripples of sound can no longer travel far, because the water of the pond itself is vanishing. The speed of sound, which is normally around 343 meters per second in the air at sea level, is entirely dependent on the density of the medium through which it travels. In the dense medium of water, sound travels more than 4 times faster. In the incredibly dense medium of steel, it travels nearly 15 times faster. But in a vacuum, where there are no molecules to vibrate, there is no medium. There is no pond. And so, sound cannot travel at all. The silence of space is not a poetic idea. It is a physical, absolute. And now, that absolute silence is descending upon the Earth. Many creatures on our planet have evolved exquisite hearing as a key to their survival, their ears shaped by the very physics of sound in our atmosphere. Think of the large, cupped ears of a desert fox, designed to gather the faintest, most distant sounds of prey scuttling across the sand. Or the facial discs of an owl, a beautiful feathered parabola that funnels the quietest rustle of a mouse in the grass directly to its asymmetrical ears, allowing it to pinpoint the sound's origin with breathtaking precision. All of this evolution, all of this natural artistry, is predicated on a world filled with a dense, sound-carrying atmosphere. As that atmosphere vanishes, these finely tuned instruments fall silent, their purpose erased. This growing quiet is more than just a physical phenomenon. It is a deep, psychological severing. We are creatures built for connection, and so much of that connection, that sense of shared presence and community, is built upon the shared medium of the air. It is the simple act of hearing a loved one's voice from another room, the comfort of distant laughter, the shared experience of music, the reassuring hum of the world going about its business. As this sonic tapestry unravels, a profound sense of isolation begins to set in, a feeling of being utterly and completely alone, even in a world still full of life. But as the world falls into this deep and profound quiet, another of our senses is about to be completely overwhelmed. As we lift our gaze from the now silent earth, our eyes are forced to witness a sky beginning to bleed, changing color in a way it never should. A spectacle of terrible, impossible beauty. Imagine the most beautiful sunset you have ever had the privilege to witness. Think of the impossible colors, the canvas of the heavens painted with streaks of deep rose, brilliant orange, and a final, lingering violet before the darkness falls. Now, imagine that same breathtaking spectacle, that same heart-achingly beautiful bleed of colors, happening not on the gentle edge of evening, but everywhere, all at once, at high noon. This is the sight that greets our eyes as the air continues to thin. The perfect, piercing sapphire blue of the sky begins to soften and change. At the zenith, directly overhead, a bruise of deep, royal purple appears, spreading slowly outwards. The rest of the sky begins to shift into a strange, coppery orange, as if the world is being viewed through a colored lens. It is a moment of profound and terrifying beauty, a celestial event that feels both sacred and deeply, fundamentally wrong. And then, as the last remnants of the upper atmosphere are stripped away, the colors drain from the world entirely. The orange fades to a pale, ashen grey, the violet deepens to an inky black, and the sky itself vanishes. In its place is the stark, absolute blackness of interplanetary space. The familiar, comforting dome of the sky is gone, and we are left standing on the surface of our world, looking directly out into the raw, unforgiving cosmos. The sun is no longer the warm, familiar, golden orb we have known our entire lives. It has become a tiny, sharp, malevolent point of pure white light, its edges perfectly defined against the black. It is the sun as seen by an astronaut on the moon, a distant, terrifying star that offers no warmth, only a harsh, brutal, and unfiltered glare. This dramatic and impossible transformation, from a gentle blue to a fiery orange, and finally to a stark black, is governed by a beautifully simple principle of physics known as Rayleigh scattering. The reason our sky is blue is not because the air itself is blue, but because of a wonderful interaction between the light from our sun and the specific molecules that make up our atmosphere. Sunlight, which appears white to our eyes, is actually a vibrant spectrum of all the colors of the rainbow, from long wavelength red light to short wavelength blue and violet light. Our atmosphere is composed almost entirely of tiny molecules of nitrogen and oxygen, which happen to be the perfect size to intercept and scatter the shorter wavelengths of light, particularly the blue. You can imagine it like this. Think of our dense atmosphere as a vast, thick forest, full of tiny pins. Now, imagine throwing two types of balls into this forest, large, heavy red rocks, and small, light blue marbles. The large red rocks will mostly power straight through the forest, their paths barely changed. But the small blue marbles will hit the pins and scatter in every direction, bouncing and ricocheting until the entire forest is filled with the color of blue. This is what happens in our sky every single day. The blue light from the sun hits the nitrogen and oxygen molecules and scatters all across the sky, eventually reaching our eyes from every direction, making the entire dome of the sky appear beautifully blue. The red and yellow light, meanwhile, passes through more directly. As our atmosphere begins to thin, however, the forest becomes less dense. There are fewer pins for the blue marbles to hit. At first, as the thinning begins, the scattering effect changes, allowing other colors to dominate temporarily, creating those beautiful, sunset-like hues of violet and orange. But as the atmospheric molecules become truly scarce, there is almost nothing left to scatter any light at all. The blue marbles, just like the red rocks, now fall straight through the sparse forest without hitting anything. We no longer see the scattered, gentle blue light filling our sky. Instead, we see only the direct, raw, white light of the sun, a mixture of all colors, coming straight from its pinpoint source. And all around it, in every other direction where the sun is not, we see nothing but the blackness of space, because there is no longer any air to catch and hold the light. We have lived our entire lives as a species, and indeed all of life on Earth has evolved under a gentle, blue, protective veil. This veil has softened the sun's glare, painted our world in gentle colors, and hidden from us the true, terrifying, and majestic face of the cosmos. For one impossible day, that veil is lifted. We find ourselves living not on a tranquil blue and white marble, but on a naked ship of rock and soil, sailing through an endless, star-dusted night. And with the sun's protective blue filter now gone, its raw, unfiltered energy beats down upon the world, and the land begins to feel a new kind of cold, even under the impossible blaze of that tiny, white-hot star. There is a profound and deeply confusing paradox that now settles over the world, a contradiction that your body struggles to comprehend. If you stand in the direct, unfiltered glare of the new, white sun, your skin begins to feel as though it is burning, a sharp, prickling heat that is almost painful. Yet, if you take a single step into the shadow cast by a tree or a building, you are plunged into a cold, so deep and so immediate that it steals your breath away. It is a cold, more bitter and penetrating than the deepest winter night you have ever experienced. The world has lost its gentle gradients of temperature. There is no longer such a thing as a warm breeze or a cool patch of shade. There is only the binary, the absolute schism of fire and ice, existing side by side, separated by nothing more than a shadow line on the ground. You can place one hand in the sunlight and feel it scorch, while your other hand, held in shadow just inches away, feels as if it is being plunged into liquid nitrogen. All the subtle, gentle, in-between temperatures that have defined our world and our comfort have vanished completely, leaving a landscape of the most brutal and unforgiving extremes. The very concept of air temperature has become meaningless, because there is almost no air left to have a temperature. There is only the raw energy of the sun and the absolute cold of the void. This impossible state of affairs reveals the second profound gift our atmosphere gave us, a gift just as vital as the pressure that held our oceans down. Its role as a magnificent planetary blanket. We often hear about the greenhouse effect as a problem, a consequence of too much carbon dioxide in the air. But in its natural balanced state, the greenhouse effect is one of the most essential ingredients for life on Earth. Certain gases in our atmosphere, most importantly water vapor and carbon dioxide, are uniquely brilliant at trapping heat. They act like a pane of glass in a greenhouse, or perhaps more accurately, like a perfectly tailored, invisible glass coat wrapped around our planet. This coat is transparent to the visible light coming in from the sun, allowing it to pass through and warm the surface of the Earth. But when the Earth's surface tries to radiate that heat back out into space as longer wavelength infrared radiation, our glass coat blocks much of it from escaping, trapping the warmth and keeping our planet at a gentle, livable average temperature of around 15 degrees Celsius. Without this natural greenhouse effect, the average temperature of the Earth would be a frigid -18 degrees Celsius, and our world would be a ball of ice. On this impossible day, we have not just lost our air, we have lost our coat. As the sun's energy strikes the ground, the surface heats up rapidly. But it radiates that heat away just as quickly, sending it streaming directly back into the blackness of space. Nothing is holding the warmth in. This is why the sunlight itself feels so intensely hot. We are being hit by the raw, unfiltered radiation of a star. But the moment we step out of that direct radiation into a shadow, we are exposed to the ambient temperature of the vacuum around us, which is plummeting towards the background temperature of deep space. A staggering -270 degrees Celsius. A mere 3 degrees above absolute zero, the point at which all atomic motion ceases. We are feeling the difference between heat, which is the transfer of energy, and temperature, which is the measure of the kinetic energy in the molecules of a substance. The sun is showering us with heat, but with no substance, no air. Around us, the temperature of that emptiness is the temperature of the void. We have lived our entire lives, our entire existence, in the gentle, forgiving, and moderate in-between that our atmosphere provides for us. It has been a grace we never knew we had, a subtle and constant moderation that protected us from the brutal extremes of our own solar system. It blurred the sharp edges of physics, turning the violent binary of sun and space into the gentle poetry of a warm day and a cool night. That moderation is now gone. And this new, brutal difference in temperature isn't just a discomfort for living things. It is beginning to tear the very fabric of our inanimate, human-built world apart. There is a new sound that begins to rise from the silent world, a sound that is not of life, but of the slow, agonizing death of the inanimate. It is the unsettling, high-pitched groan of a skyscraper in a sun-drenched city, a sound of immense stress, as if a giant beast were being stretched upon a rack. It is not the familiar sound of a building swaying in the wind, but a more sinister noise, a cry of protest from the very atoms of the steel and concrete. Soon, it is joined by other sounds. The sharp, percussive crack of a bridge, span as a fissure runs through its surface. The deep, shuddering boom of a concrete dam fracturing under an impossible strain. The slow, tortured shriek of railway lines twisting and buckling from their moorings. Our entire built world, all the monuments of our ingenuity and permanence, have begun to tear themselves apart under the silent, relentless violence of the sun. You could stand on a hill overlooking a city and watch as a pane of glass on the sun-facing side of a building, heated to an incredible temperature, suddenly shatters, its molecules expanding too quickly for the structure to bear. You could watch a long, elegant suspension bridge begin to sag and twist, its mighty steel cables that face the sun expanding and lengthening, while those in the bridge's own shadow contract in the profound cold, pulling the entire structure into a warped and broken shape. The very roads we have built to connect our world are now buckling and cracking, creating jagged fissures in the asphalt, as one side of the road expands in the heat while the other, shaded by a curb or a tree line, shrinks in the cold. It is a slow, methodical, and utterly unstoppable demolition on a planetary scale. This planetary scale destruction is born from a simple and fundamental property of all matter: thermal expansion and contraction. On a microscopic level, every material, from the steel in a girder to the concrete in a sidewalk, is a lattice of atoms and molecules held together in a delicate dance of electromagnetic forces. When a material is heated, energy is transferred to these atoms, causing them to vibrate more vigorously and push their neighbors further away. This collective pushing away is what we observe as expansion. Conversely, when a material is cooled, its atoms lose energy, vibrate less, and huddle closer together, causing the material to contract. We have harnessed this principle for millennia. A blacksmith, for example, heats a piece of iron to make it expand and become malleable, hammers it into a new shape, and then cools it to lock that shape in place by contraction. We are now witnessing this same process, but it is happening without control, without intention, and to every single structure on Earth, all at once. Every material has its own unique rate of expansion and contraction, a property known as its coefficient of thermal expansion. Steel, for instance, expands and contracts at a different rate than concrete. Our architects and engineers are masters of accounting for these differences. They design buildings and bridges with subtle expansion joints, tiny, hidden gaps that allow the structure to breathe, to expand on a hot summer day and contract on a cold winter night without damaging itself. But all of this brilliant engineering, all of these careful calculations, are based on one fundamental, unspoken assumption: that these temperature changes will be slow, gentle, and moderate, governed by the soft blanket of an atmosphere. They were never designed for a world where one side of a steel beam can be over 100 degrees Celsius, while the other side, just a few inches away in shadow, is plummeting towards negative 100 degrees Celsius. This instantaneous and extreme temperature differential, this thermal shock, creates stresses within the materials that are far beyond anything they were ever designed to withstand. The expanding side and the contracting side are literally tearing the object apart from the inside out. Our greatest and most enduring monuments, our bridges that span great waters, and our buildings that scrape the underside of the clouds, have always appeared to us as symbols of permanence and strength. But we are now learning they are, in fact, incredibly fragile things. Glass houses built within a gentle terrarium, their survival utterly dependent on the forgiving and moderate environment provided by the sky. And while our world of steel and concrete groans under this unbearable strain, the world of water, the very lifeblood of our planet, begins to answer a new and even more powerful call, a strange and silent summons to the heavens above. Look out at the ocean, or what was once the ocean. The familiar, rhythmic breathing of the waves, the gentle lapping of the tide against the shore, is gone. In its place is a scene of unimaginable and surreal violence. The entire surface of the water, from the coastlines to the deepest trenches, is churning in a furious, chaotic turmoil. It is not the familiar anger of a storm-tossed sea, whipped into a frenzy by wind, because there is no wind. This is something far stranger. The ocean is boiling. It is a roiling, churning cauldron that stretches to the horizon, and every lake, every river, every pond, every single body of liquid water on the planet is doing the same. Vast, silent clouds of vapor are being released from this planetary boil, rising in thick, billowing plumes into the absolute blackness of the sky. Yet there is a profound and unsettling contradiction to this scene. If you were to dip your hand into this furiously boiling water, it would feel strangely, impossibly cold to the touch. This is not a boiling driven by heat, but a boiling driven by the void itself. It is a cold boil, a silent, furious, and unstoppable transformation of every drop of the world's surface water from its liquid state into a gas, an exhalation of the planet's very soul into the emptiness of space. The great waterfalls of the world, like Niagara or Victoria Falls, are no longer cascading curtains of water, but terrifying torrents of vapor, their roar silenced as they flash into steam in mid-air. The gentle rains that might have been falling are now virga of ice crystals that sublimate and vanish long before they could ever reach the ground. The entire water cycle, that beautiful, elegant system of evaporation, condensation, and precipitation that has governed life for billions of years, has been broken in a single, violent instant. The physics behind this incredible spectacle lies in the intimate and powerful relationship between pressure and the boiling point of a liquid. We are all taught that water boils at 100 degrees Celsius, or 212 degrees Fahrenheit, but that simple fact is profoundly incomplete. Water boils at 100 degrees Celsius at standard sea level atmospheric pressure. The 14.7 pounds per square inch of air pressing down on the surface of a pot of water is like a physical lid, a weight that holds the energetic water molecules in place, keeping them in their liquid form. To make them boil, you have to add heat, giving the molecules enough energy to overcome that atmospheric pressure and escape as a gas, which we call steam. But what if you could remove the lid? What if you could take away the pressure? If you were to place a glass of room temperature water in a vacuum chamber and pump out the air, the water would begin to boil furiously, even though its temperature isn't changing. By removing the pressure, you have removed the barrier that was keeping the molecules in their liquid state. They no longer need the extra energy from heat to escape. They can simply leave. This is precisely what is now happening on a global scale. The atmosphere was the lid on the oceans. Now that the lid is gone, the pressure above the water has dropped to nearly zero. The water molecules on the surface no longer need the heat from the sun to escape. They are being pulled into the vacuum of space, and the energy for this transformation, this phase change from liquid to gas, is being drawn from the water itself, which is why the boiling water becomes progressively colder. In the harsh environment of a vacuum, liquid water as we know it is fundamentally unstable. It cannot exist. It must either freeze solid or boil away into a gas. The oceans, in this final, glorious, and terrible act, have chosen to boil. We have always thought of liquid as a fundamental and stable state of matter, a defining feature of our world. But we see now that it is not. The liquid state is a conditional state, a temporary and beautiful state of grace, a delicate balancing act made possible only by the immense, constant, and invisible weight of our sky. All of this water, now escaping its liquid prison by the billions of tons every second, creates a vast, rising cloud of vapor, a fleeting, ghostly echo of the very atmosphere we have just lost. For a fleeting, deceptive moment, it seems as if the world is healing itself. A hazy shroud returns to the sky, a soft, greyish-white veil that obscures the harsh pinpoint of the sun and the terrifying blackness of space. As the billions of tons of water vapor from the boiling oceans rise into the near vacuum, they coalesce into a thick, low-lying fog, a planetary mist that blankets the landscape. The world is briefly transformed into a place of ghosts and shadows, a strange, ethereal dreamscape where distant mountains and the skeletons of cities fade into a uniform, pearlescent grey. Sounds, which had all but vanished, might momentarily return, but they are distorted and muffled, echoes in a steam-filled room. A cracking skyscraper might now sound like a distant, wet groan, the cry of a whale trapped deep beneath the ice. There is a strange, clammy feeling that settles over everything, a dampness that clings to the skin, but it brings no comfort, no relief. This is not the gentle, life-giving humidity of a misty morning. It is the sterile, suffocating dampness of a world whose oceans are being exhaled in a single, final, gasping breath. It is a moment of the most profound and cruel false hope, a brief, humid memory of a living world, a ghostly echo of the atmosphere that has already been lost forever. This is not a return, but the final, visible act of departure. This temporary shroud is a phantom atmosphere, a fleeting apparition governed by the physics of vapor pressure and the unforgiving laws of the cosmos. As the oceans boiled, they filled the void immediately above the surface with a dense cloud of H2O molecules, creating a temporary, localized pressure. This new atmosphere is composed almost entirely of water vapor, a stark contrast to the rich, multi-layered blanket of nitrogen and oxygen that preceded it. But this ghost of an atmosphere is catastrophically unstable for two fundamental reasons. First, it has no weight above it. Our original atmosphere was a deep, heavy ocean of gas, and its immense weight was what kept the lower, denser layers pressed firmly against the planet. This new water vapor, however, has nothing but the vacuum of space above it, so there is no immense pressure holding it down. Second, and more critically, it must contend with the ceaseless pull of the void and the relentless push of the sun. Every planet has a gravitational grip, a pull that it exerts on everything around it. To break free from that grip, an object or a gas molecule must reach a certain speed, a threshold known as the escape velocity. For a planet of Earth's size and mass, that speed is a staggering 11.2 kilometers per second, which is roughly 40,000 kilometers per hour. Our old atmosphere was a beautiful mix of gases. The heavy ones, like nitrogen and oxygen, move at average speeds far, far below Earth's escape velocity, so gravity can hold onto them for billions of years. Lighter gases, like hydrogen and helium, move much faster, and they can and do leak into space over time. Water vapor, H2O, is actually a relatively light molecule, much lighter than nitrogen or oxygen, but it was held in check by the sheer weight and density of the rest of the air above it. Now, with that protective weight gone, these newly liberated water molecules are exposed directly to the harshness of space. They are energized by the sun's radiation, and most importantly, they are swept away by the solar wind, a constant, supersonic stream of charged particles flowing from the sun. This solar wind acts like a cosmic broom, sweeping the molecules of this phantom atmosphere away into deep space almost as quickly as the oceans can produce them. So this brief, foggy reprieve is nothing more than a transitional state, a visible representation of the planet's water, making its final journey from the surface to the void. It is a memory of a world that is already gone, a last, wet exhalation before the final and eternal silence. And as this ghostly, misty shield is torn away into the darkness, It takes with it the very last of our planet's protection, exposing the naked surface to the silent, deadly, and constant rain that is always falling from the depths of the cosmos. With the last of the phantom fog stripped away, the sky returns to a perfect, clear, and terrifying black. And in this blackness, a new and constant phenomenon begins. A faint, continuous sparkle fills the void, a silent, never-ending shower of tiny, brilliant fireworks. It is as if the stars themselves are not fixed, but are constantly shedding tiny, glittering fragments that fall towards the earth. These are not the gentle, romantic shooting stars we have wished upon on summer nights. Those were the harmless farewells of small grains of space dust, burning up from friction high in the mesosphere, beautiful and distant. What we are witnessing now is the arrival. These silent, brilliant flashes are the impacts of those same grains of dust, those same micrometeoroids, no longer burning up miles above, but striking the ground, the buildings, and everything on the surface with their full cosmic velocity. The world has become a cosmic firing range, and we are standing on the target. If you watch the ground closely, you can see the evidence of this constant bombardment. A puff of dust kicks up from the dry soil, a tiny, perfectly circular crater, no bigger than a pinhead, appearing where there was none a moment before. A leaf on a dying tree is suddenly pierced by an invisible needle. A window on a shattered skyscraper that has somehow survived until now suddenly develops a tiny starburst-shaped crack. This cosmic rain is mostly fine dust, but it is relentless, a form of slow, steady erosion from the heavens. And occasionally, a larger object, perhaps the size of a pebble or a marble, makes its journey to the surface. It does not announce its arrival with a fiery streak across the sky. It is invisible until the very moment of impact, when it strikes with a silent, brilliant flash and the force of a small bomb, carving out a crater several feet across, tossing rock and shattered soil outwards in a perfect, silent spray. The sheer, life-saving miracle of our former atmosphere becomes terrifyingly apparent in these moments. We were living under a shield of unimaginable strength, a barrier so effective that it rendered a constant celestial war utterly invisible and harmless. This shield worked primarily through the power of friction. When a meteoroid enters the atmosphere at a typical speed of, say, 70,000 kilometers per hour, it collides with billions upon billions of air molecules. Each of these collisions, this intense friction, converts the object's incredible kinetic energy into heat, raising its surface temperature to thousands of degrees Celsius and causing it to glow and vaporize into a harmless trail of incandescent dust. You can think of the atmosphere as a shield made of incredibly thick, fine sand, 100 kilometers deep. Any projectile fired at it, no matter how fast, is slowed, abraded, and ground down to nothing before it can ever reach the bottom. We were so safe under this shield that we forgot it was even there. Now the shield is gone. The kinetic energy of an object is calculated by the formula 1/2 mass times velocity squared. The velocity is the critical factor. Even a tiny object, a single gram of rock, moving at cosmic speeds, carries the energy of a rifle bullet. A pebble weighing just a few ounces impacts with the explosive force of a stick of dynamite. And this constant bombardment is not the only invisible rain now reaching us. The atmosphere, along with our planet's magnetic field, was also our primary shield against cosmic rays and high-energy particles from the sun. These are subatomic particles, mostly protons and atomic nuclei, accelerated to nearly the speed of light by distant supernovae and other violent cosmic events. They are a constant, invisible sleet of radiation that is always passing through our solar system. Our atmosphere was thick enough to absorb most of their energy, to shatter them in the upper layers and protect the surface. Now, these microscopic bullets are striking the surface unimpeded, a form of radiation far more penetrating and damaging than the sun's ultraviolet light. We have always pictured our world as a peaceful, isolated haven. But the truth is, we have always lived on a peaceful island in the middle of a raging, chaotic, cosmic ocean. We were protected by the invisible cradle of our atmosphere, unaware of the constant storm raging just miles above our heads. Now, the cradle has vanished. The storm has come ashore, and this invisible radiation, this cosmic rain isn't just a physical bombardment from above. It has a deeper, more insidious effect, for it has begun a silent and invisible process of unraveling the very code of life itself, from within. There is a new sensation that begins to creep into the living tissues of the world, a feeling that has no name in any language we have ever spoken. It is a strange warmth that builds deep beneath the skin, a feeling not of heat from the sun, but of a slow, internal dissolution. It is a quiet, pervasive sickness that settles into the very marrow of the bones, a profound weariness that seems to emanate from every cell. Looking around at the natural world, we can see this invisible ailment made visible. The great forests, which at first stood as green statues, now begin to show signs of a deep and catastrophic decay. The leaves of the trees are turning a sickly, mottled brown and curling in on themselves, not with the crisp dryness of autumn, but with a limp, diseased languor. Fields of vibrant wildflowers, which had been spared the thermal shock that shattered the cities, now seem to be fading, their brilliant colours desaturating, as if an artist were slowly washing all the pigment from a watercolour painting. This is not a death from a lack of water, for the world was just recently awash in vapour. This is not a death from the cold or the heat, for it is happening everywhere, in sun and in shadow. This is a more fundamental and insidious death, a wound inflicted not upon the surface, but upon the very blueprint of life itself. The invisible rain of cosmic radiation, falling silently and relentlessly from the black sky, is now doing its work. The living cell, the fundamental unit of all life on Earth, is a marvel of resilience, but it is a resilience born of a protected world. For billions of years, life on the surface of our planet evolved under the gentle guardianship of the atmosphere. Specifically, it was protected by a delicate layer of O3 molecules, known as the ozone layer, located high in the stratosphere. This thin veil of a special kind of oxygen molecule was our planet's perfect, custom-made sunscreen, absorbing the vast majority of the sun's most energetic and damaging ultraviolet radiation, particularly the dangerous wavelengths known as UVC. With the entire atmosphere now gone, that shield has vanished completely. The surface of the Earth is now being sterilized by the full, brutal spectrum of solar radiation, alongside the constant, penetrating sleet of high-energy cosmic rays from deep space. These forms of hard radiation act upon living tissue not like a poison, but like a form of microscopic artillery. Each high-energy photon or particle is like an infinitesimally small, invisible bullet. And the primary target of these bullets is the most important and most fragile molecule in every living cell. The long, elegant, and impossibly complex molecule of deoxyribonucleic acid, our DNA. You can imagine the DNA in each of your cells as a delicate, ancient manuscript, a book containing the 4 billion-year-old story of life, written in the most fragile of inks. These cosmic rays are like a hailstorm in the library, shredding the pages, smearing the ink, and erasing the words. They snap the delicate strands of the double helix, break the chemical bonds, and corrupt the genetic code. Miraculously, life has evolved a team of microscopic librarians, enzymes that constantly patrol the DNA, proofreading the code and repairing any damage they find. But they were designed for a world with a functioning shield, a world with only a light, background drizzle of radiation. They were never meant to withstand this full, unrelenting cosmic deluge. The cellular repair mechanisms are now completely and utterly overwhelmed. The damage is accumulating far faster than it can ever be repaired, leading to catastrophic cell death and uncontrolled, chaotic mutations. The browning of the leaves, the fading of the flowers, the deep, strange sickness in our bones. This is the visible evidence of that 4 billion-year-old message being scrambled and erased from every living thing on the planet. Life is not merely a collection of matter. It is a delicate, continuous, and impossibly ancient conversation written in a chemical code. And that conversation is now, finally, falling silent. And while this invisible death works its way through the very code of existence, what of the creatures who live and die by the breath? What happens when the most fundamental act of life, the simple drawing of a breath, becomes an act of drawing in a void? Take a moment, right now, to feel the gentle rhythm of your own breathing. Feel the air enter your nostrils, cool and full of substance. Feel your chest rise, your lungs expanding to welcome this gift from the sky. And feel the gentle, warm release of the exhale. This simple, unconscious act is the most fundamental rhythm of your life, a constant, reassuring exchange with the world. Now, imagine taking that same deep, instinctive breath, but instead of filling your lungs with life, the motion itself pulls the very life out of you. This is the final, visceral, and horrifying reality for every single air-breathing creature on Earth. The physical sensation is impossible for us to truly comprehend. As your diaphragm contracts and your chest expands, driven by ancient instinct, it creates a space for the air to enter. But there is no air. There is no substance. There is only a vacuum. Instead of a life-giving rush of oxygen, there is a powerful, violent suction, a pulling sensation from deep within your own body. The gases dissolved in your own bloodstream, the oxygen, the carbon dioxide, the nitrogen, are ripped out of solution by the void in your lungs and pulled from your body. It is the opposite of breathing. It is a form of internal exsanguination, but of gas, not blood. Around the world, a silent, tragic tableau is unfolding. The birds that struggled against the thinning air now tumble from the sky in their millions, their wings still, their bodies losing the last of their internal pressure to the void. On the plains of the Serengeti, the great herds of wildebeest and zebra collapse in heaps, their powerful lungs betraying them in the final moments. In our own quiet neighborhoods, the simple, reassuring sound of a dog barking is silenced forever. It is a swift and silent and planetary-scale suffocation. The biology of our breathing is a beautiful and elegant testament to our life in a pressurized world. It is a process governed not by sucking, but by a gentle and constant pressure differential. Your lungs are not like vacuum cleaners. They are more like bellows. In a normal breath, your diaphragm, a large muscle at the base of your chest, contracts and flattens. This increases the volume of your chest cavity, which in turn lowers the pressure inside your lungs relative to the pressure of the air outside your body. Because nature always seeks equilibrium, the higher pressure air outside simply flows into the lower pressure space inside your lungs until the pressures are equalized. It is the atmosphere itself that does the work, gently and reliably, pushing the breath of life into you thousands of times a day. But in a vacuum, this entire elegant system works in a horrifying reverse. When your diaphragm contracts, the pressure inside your lungs drops to nearly zero, but the pressure outside is also zero. There is no air to rush in. Instead, the only source of higher pressure is inside your own body, in your own tissues and your own blood, which are still held at their normal internal pressure. So the void in your lungs pulls the gases out of your own body. This terrifying process is not even the most immediate threat. An even stranger and more violent process begins to happen throughout the body, a phenomenon known as ebullition. The boiling point of a liquid, as we saw with the oceans, depends on the pressure around it. Our bodies are mostly water, and the pressure of the atmosphere is just enough to keep that water in a liquid state at our normal body temperature of 37 degrees Celsius. When the external pressure drops to a near vacuum, the boiling point of the water in our soft tissues and blood plummets. It drops below our own body temperature, and so the fluids within our own bodies begin to boil. Bubbles of water vapor would form in our blood, in our muscles, under our skin, causing the body to swell to a grotesque size. This is not science fiction. It is the known, grim reality of exposure to a hard vacuum. The simple, rhythmic breath is the most basic promise we are given at birth. It is the unconscious covenant we make with the sky, an agreement that the air will always be there to answer the call of our lungs. On this day, for every air-breathing creature, that covenant has been irrevocably and fatally broken. The fate of all who live by the breath is sealed. But what of the life that does not breathe air? What of the silent, rooted kingdom of the plants, the very foundation of our world? Their relationship with the vanished sky is a different one, but as we will see, it is just as intimate and just as fatal. The great forests of the world, from the sprawling, humid expanse of the Amazon to the silent, snow-dusted taiga of the north, now stand as an immense, silent testament to a life that has just ended. To the casual eye, they might still look alive, perfect green statues under the harsh white sun. But they are dying, not from the slow decay of radiation, but from a thirst so sudden and so absolute that it is tearing them apart from the inside out. They are dying of thirst in a world that, just moments ago, was awash in a thick fog of their own evaporated water. To understand this deep and sudden death, we must look closely, past the great trunks and branches, to the quiet, humble surface of a single leaf. Here, on the underside, are thousands of microscopic pores, tiny gateways known as stomata. In the living world, we knew these stomata were the lungs and mouths of the plant, elegantly opening and closing to breathe in the carbon dioxide needed for photosynthesis and exhale the oxygen that gave us life. They also, crucially, released water vapor in a gentle, controlled process. Now, in the face of the void, these delicate gateways have become gaping, irreparable wounds. They are wide open, and through them, the plant is not just losing water, it is hemorrhaging it, violently and uncontrollably, into the absolute dryness of the vacuum. The very lifeblood of the forest is being vented into space in a final, silent, desperate sigh. This process is a catastrophic failure of one of life's most beautiful and elegant mechanisms: transpiration. We often think of plants drawing water up from their roots through some kind of internal pumping action, but the truth is far more magical and passive. The engine that drives the movement of water from the soil to the top of the tallest redwood tree is, in fact, the sun and the atmosphere itself. As water gently evaporates from the surface of the stomata on a leaf, it creates a tiny bit of tension, a negative pressure, in the water column that fills the plant's vascular system, its xylem. Because water molecules have a powerful cohesion, a tendency to stick together, this tension creates a continuous pull, drawing the entire column of water upwards, molecule by molecule. It is exactly like sipping a drink through a very, very long straw. The suction you create with your mouth is the evaporation from the leaf, and the liquid rising in the straw is the water moving up the trunk of the tree. This transpirational pull is a delicate, perfectly balanced dance between the water inside the plant and the humidity of the air outside. The plant can regulate this process by opening and closing its stomata, conserving water when the air is dry and releasing it when the air is humid. But a vacuum is not merely dry air. It represents an infinite and absolute demand for water. The pull from the void is no longer a gentle sip, but a violent, irresistible suction. This absolute pressure differential creates a tension on the water column inside the plant so immense that it literally snaps. The water column breaks apart, a process known as cavitation, creating bubbles of vapor that instantly block the flow, like an embolism in a blood vessel. At the same time, the water inside the plant's individual cells, now exposed to the vacuum through the open stomata, begins to boil away, even at ambient temperatures, just as the oceans did. It is a process of explosive decompression, a catastrophic, instantaneous dehydration that ruptures cell walls and destroys the plant's internal structure in seconds. The silent, rooted kingdom of the plants, the very foundation of nearly all life on Earth, the quiet architects of the very air we once breathed, have died. Their elegant, ancient pact with the sky has been betrayed. And as all the water on the surface of the planet, and all the water held within the delicate tissues of the biosphere, completes its journey into the void, we must wonder about the vast, hidden oceans of water, the reserves hidden deep within the rock and soil of the earth. Surely, they must be safe from the call of the sky. Surely, they are buried too deep to hear the silent summons of the void. A new and impossible phenomenon now begins, a change that seems to defy the very laws of gravity. The dry, cracked earth beneath your feet, the dusty soil that was just recently scoured by the sun, begins to grow dark with moisture. The ground becomes damp, then wet, and then, impossibly, small puddles begin to form in the hollows. From the cracks in shattered roads, and from the dry, barren soil of the deserts, water begins to seep upwards, as if the planet itself has sprung 1,000,000 leaks and has begun to weep from its every stone pore. Springs emerge, where no spring has ever been seen. The entire surface of the earth is slowly turning into a dark, deep, and unstable mud, as all the world's hidden groundwater is drawn to the surface by the irresistible and unrelenting pull of the vacuum. The deep, secret reservoirs of the planet are now answering the call of the void, rising up from their ancient, rocky beds to join the great exodus to the stars. The world is not just weeping, it is bleeding out its last hidden reserves of life-giving water. This is a quiet, creeping flood, not from above, but from below, a final, desperate inversion of the natural order of the world. Our planet's crust, which we often imagine as a solid, impermeable ball of rock, is in reality more like a vast, complex sponge. It is riddled with pores, cracks, and fissures, and vast layers of porous rock like sandstone or limestone, known as aquifers, hold staggering quantities of fresh water. These subterranean oceans of groundwater are the source of our wells and springs, and they contain more than 100 times the amount of fresh water found in all the lakes and rivers on the surface combined. This immense volume of water stays deep within the earth for two simple reasons: the pull of gravity, which holds it down, and the constant, immense pressure of the atmosphere above it, which pushes down on the surface and keeps the water table in a state of equilibrium. You can visualize this by imagining a large sponge that has been completely saturated with water. If you set it on a table, a little water might leak out, but most of it is held within the sponge's structure by surface tension. The weight of the air pressing down on the sponge from all sides helps to keep it contained. Squeezing the sponge is like the combined pressure of gravity and the atmosphere. But what happens if you place that same saturated sponge inside a powerful vacuum chamber? As the air is pumped out, the external pressure drops to zero. The air trapped within the pores of the sponge expands, and the water itself begins to boil, and it is violently pulled out of the sponge's structure until the sponge is left perfectly dry. The vacuum does not need to touch every drop of water. It simply creates a pressure differential that the water is forced to obey. This is precisely what is happening to the Earth. The vacuum above the surface has created a colossal pressure differential. The pull of this vacuum is now stronger than the pull of gravity, holding the groundwater down. So the water begins to move, migrating upwards through the porous rock and soil. From the high-pressure environment deep underground to the zero-pressure environment on the surface, where it emerges and immediately begins to boil away into space. This mass upward migration of water would also have catastrophic geological consequences, destabilizing vast tracts of land, triggering massive mudslides, and causing the ground itself to slump and collapse as its supportive structure of water is removed. The Earth has always held these hidden oceans within its crust, a secret and ancient reservoir of life that we have only ever tapped into with our deepest wells. Now, that deepest secret is being spilled, a final, planetary offering to the vast and empty silence of space. With the world now silent, its oceans boiling away, its great forests flash-dried, and the very ground itself weeping its last moisture into the sky, what possible refuge could remain? Where could the last vestiges of humanity turn as their entire world, from the sky to the stone, dissolves around them? In the profound and absolute silence of the new Earth, there might be, in a few isolated places, the last sound in the world. It is a gentle, rhythmic, and monotonous hum, the sound of an electric motor, the whir of a fan, the quiet click of a relay. It is the sound of machinery working tirelessly to do the job that an entire planetary biosphere once did for free. It is the sound of a life support system, the only music left in the universe. Imagine being one of the few, the very few, survivors, sealed deep underground in a self-sustaining bunker, or perhaps looking down from the fragile haven of the International Space Station. Life has been reduced to the confines of a few small rooms, a metallic womb against the hostile void. The air you breathe has a sterile, recycled quality to it, tasting faintly of ozone and metal. Every drop of water you drink is a miracle of purification technology, reclaimed and reused in a perfect, closed loop. And through a single, thick, triple-paned porthole of quartz glass, you watch your world. You see a planet that is no longer blue and white, no longer a vibrant, living marble. It is a bruised, rust-colored, and grey sphere, half in the brutal glare of the sun, half in the absolute blackness of shadow. The psychological weight of this view would be unbearable, a burden of grief too heavy for any single soul to carry. You are the last observer, the final witness to a death of unimaginable scale. You are an island of warmth and pressure and life, floating in an ocean of cold and vacuum and death that was once your home. The technology required to create such an impossible sanctuary is a testament to human ingenuity, but it is also a profound lesson in humility. These life support systems must replicate, with perfect fidelity, the complex and interwoven cycles of an entire planet within the space of a small room. The very air must be manufactured, moment by moment. Scrubbers, filled with compounds like lithium hydroxide, work constantly to pull the carbon dioxide, the CO2, from the air you exhale, preventing it from building up to toxic levels. That captured CO2 might then be processed, its carbon stored away, and its oxygen reclaimed. Meanwhile, other systems, likely using a process of electrolysis, run a powerful electric current through water, splitting the H2O molecules into their constituent parts: breathable oxygen, which is vented back into the cabin, and hydrogen, which is either stored or used as fuel. Every single drop of moisture, from your breath to your sweat, must be captured by dehumidifiers, filtered, purified, and returned to the drinking water supply. A constant internal air pressure of 14.7 pounds per square inch must be maintained against the perfect vacuum outside, meaning the habitat itself must be a vessel of impossible strength and integrity, with not a single microscopic leak. We have attempted to build such a closed system on Earth. The most famous attempt was the Biosphere 2 project in the 1990s, a massive, sealed glass enclosure in the Arizona desert designed to house 8 people for 2 years. But even with all our knowledge, the experiment ran into profound difficulties. Oxygen levels mysteriously plummeted, carbon dioxide levels fluctuated wildly, and unforeseen chemical reactions with the concrete foundation threw the entire delicate system out of balance. It taught us that a planet's biosphere is a thing of staggering, almost incomprehensible complexity, a 4-billion-year-old dance that we do not yet know how to choreograph. For the survivors in our story, their artificial world is a fragile, temporary stay against the inevitable. Their existence is haunted by the inverted overview effect, the profound cognitive shift that astronauts experience when they see the Earth from space. But where they saw a beautiful, unified, living whole, the survivors see a corpse. They see the fragility of a world that has now been broken, and in that view, they see the fragility of their own tiny, humming, mechanical refuge. And for these few, terrified survivors, looking out from their lonely sanctuaries at the unchanging, silent cosmos, a chilling and profound realization would slowly begin to dawn. The stars themselves seem to have changed. Have you ever truly seen the stars? I know we have all looked up on a clear night, far from the lights of the city, and felt a sense of awe at the dusting of faint, gentle lights across the blackness. But what we see, what we have always seen, is a muted and softened version of reality, a beautiful dream of the cosmos. From the porthole of the last sanctuary, or from the surface of the dead Earth itself, to look up is to be completely and utterly overwhelmed. The sky is not black. It is a dense, crowded, and blazing tapestry of light. There are so many stars, packed so closely together, that it seems there is more light than darkness. They are not the gentle, faint pinpricks we are used to, but brilliant, sharp, and intensely coloured points of diamond white, sapphire blue, and ruby red. And the great, misty river of the Milky Way, which to us appears as a faint, ethereal cloud, is now a blinding, ferocious cataract of stellar fire, a dense, blazing band of light that tears the sky in two. It is a sight of such raw, majestic, and terrifying beauty that it would feel like looking upon the unveiled face of God. But amidst all of this overwhelming celestial grandeur, there is one detail that is more unnerving than all the others. The most chilling and profound change is a simple one. The stars do not twinkle. They are absolutely, perfectly, and unnervingly steady. The gentle, poetic twinkling of the stars The quality that inspired lullabies and wonder for all of human history is not a property of the stars themselves. It is a property of our atmosphere. As the light from a distant star travels the vast, empty trillions of kilometers of space, its path is perfectly straight and unwavering. But in the last 100 kilometers of its journey, it must pass through Earth's atmosphere. Our air, which seems so clear and still to us, is in reality a turbulent, churning, invisible river of shifting temperatures and densities. There are warm pockets and cool pockets, high-pressure zones and low-pressure zones, all moving and swirling like eddies in a stream. As the tiny, focused beam of starlight passes through these turbulent cells, it is bent and refracted, this way and that, thousands of times a second. It is a phenomenon astronomers call atmospheric seeing. You can witness this same effect by looking at a coin at the bottom of a shimmering swimming pool. The coin itself is perfectly still, but the moving, turbulent water on the surface constantly bends the light, reflecting from it, making the coin's image appear to shimmer and dance. Our atmosphere is a 100-kilometer deep swimming pool that we are always looking through. The twinkling of the stars is the beautiful proof of the vibrant, living, moving air above our heads. Now, with that atmospheric river gone, the starlight's long journey ends without that final, turbulent dance. Its path is perfectly straight, from the star to our eyes, and so we see it as it truly is, a steady, unwavering, and eternal point of light. Furthermore, the absence of the atmosphere, combined with the end of all artificial light pollution from our dead cities, would reveal a universe of unimaginable richness. The faint, cloudy patches of nebulae, like the Great Orion Nebula, would resolve into brilliant, glowing clouds of incandescent gas, their colors visible to the naked eye. Distant galaxies, like our neighbor Andromeda, which appears as a tiny, faint smudge to us, would become a clear and obvious spinning disk of light, a separate island universe floating in the darkness. We have always lived at the bottom of a deep and shimmering ocean of air, seeing the universe through a beautiful, dreamy, and distorting lens. For one terrible, glorious day, we are granted the perfect, terrifying clarity of an astronaut. We see the cosmos as it truly is, and this perfect, clear, and unveiled view of the universe reveals not just a new and terrible beauty, but also a fundamental and dangerous change in our world's relationship with its own parent star. From our new, terrifyingly clear vantage point, our relationship with our own star is fundamentally and irrevocably changed. The sun is no longer the warm, golden orb of our poetry and our mornings, a benevolent presence that brings gentle warmth and soft light to the world. It has become a sharp, white, and malevolent eye staring out of the blackness. Seen without the soft, blurring filter of our atmosphere, it is a perfect, terrifyingly well-defined circle, its edge so crisp it looks as if it could cut the fabric of space itself. Around this brilliant, white disk, a new and permanent halo has appeared. The sun's own ghostly atmosphere, the corona. This ethereal, shimmering crown of superheated plasma, millions of degrees in temperature, is normally visible to us only during the fleeting, magical moments of a total solar eclipse. Now, it is a constant and majestic feature in the sky, a terrifying and beautiful reminder of the star's hidden, violent nature. At the edge of the sun, you might even be able to witness its fury directly, seeing the great, arching loops of solar prominences and the sudden, brilliant flashes of solar flares, eruptions of energy that once expended themselves harmlessly in our upper atmosphere, but now have a clear and unimpeded path to our world's surface. The familiar, gentle, yellow-gold color of our sun was like the blue of the sky, a beautiful illusion created by the atmosphere. The sun's true color, when all the wavelengths of its light are seen together, without any filtering, is a brilliant, pure white. The reason it appears yellowish to us is a direct consequence of the same Rayleigh scattering that makes the sky blue. As the sunlight passes through the air, the atmosphere scatters a portion of the blue and violet light out of the direct beam. When you take the full spectrum of white light and remove a little bit of the blue, the remaining light appears slightly yellow, or, during sunrise and sunset, when it passes through even more air, a deeper orange or red. We have never, in the entire history of our species, seen our sun's true face from the surface of our planet. We have only ever seen its softened, color-corrected portrait. Beyond its visible light, the sun is also the source of a constant, invisible force. The solar wind. This is not a wind in any terrestrial sense, but a supersonic stream of charged particles, mostly protons and electrons, that are constantly boiling off the sun's surface and streaming outwards through the solar system at speeds of over 1,000,000 miles per hour. For billions of years, Earth has been protected from this onslaught by a two-layered shield. Our first and most powerful defense is the planet's magnetic field, the magnetosphere, which deflects the vast majority of these particles around the planet. But the atmosphere was our crucial second line of defense, a thick, dense barrier that absorbed the energy of any particles that made it through, slowing them down and stopping them from ever reaching the surface. Now, that secondary shield is gone. The solar wind, this relentless stream of high-energy particles, strikes the surface of our planet directly and without mercy. It acts like a cosmic sandblaster, a process known as sputtering, physically knocking atoms and molecules off the surface of the rock and soil, contributing to a new, slow-motion erosion of the planet itself. We have always called our sun life-giving, and it is. But its gift of life was only possible because we were born shielded from its true, violent, and indifferent nature. Its grace was always conditional upon our protection. Its power is absolute, and this direct, unfiltered assault from the sun does not just physically erode the planet. It begins to fundamentally change its surface chemistry, painting the dead, sterilized world in new and strangely alien colors. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the color palette of the dead Earth begins to change. The pale brown of the wilted fields, the deep grey of the mountain ranges, the muted tans of the deserts all begin to take on a new, underlying hue. It is a reddish, rusty tint, as if a fine layer of paprika has been dusted over the entire globe. The metal skeletons of our shattered cities are the first to show the change most dramatically. A twisted steel girder on a fallen bridge, once a dull grey, now begins to blush with a deep, angry red. The abandoned cars lining the cracked highways begin to corrode at an accelerated rate, their painted surfaces peeling away to reveal the rapidly rusting metal beneath. But it is not just our manufactured world that is changing. The very soil and rock of the planet, which in many places are rich with iron compounds, are beginning to undergo a fundamental chemical transformation under the relentless, unfiltered glare of the star. The whole world, silently and slowly, has begun to rust. This process is a form of oxidation, a chemical reaction that is familiar to all of us. We see it in the slow, creeping rust that devours an old iron nail left out in the rain, or in the way a sliced apple turns brown when exposed to the air. We typically, and correctly, associate this process with the presence of oxygen. But in its broadest chemical sense, oxidation is not just about oxygen. It is a reaction that involves the loss of electrons from an atom or molecule. And while the oxygen in our former atmosphere was the primary oxidizing agent on our planet, it is not the only one. In this new, airless world, there are two new and incredibly powerful catalysts for oxidation: the intense, high-energy ultraviolet radiation from the sun and the constant bombardment of charged particles from the solar wind. This constant shower of energy can trigger and accelerate oxidation reactions on the surface. High-energy photons can directly break chemical bonds and strip electrons from atoms, and the charged particles of the solar wind can induce chemical changes in the minerals of the soil and rock. You can think of it like an old, coloured photograph, or a piece of painted fabric left out in the harsh sun for many years. The vibrant colours slowly fade, bleach, and change into new, muted, and washed-out hues. This is not just a physical fading, it is a chemical change, a slow burning of the pigment by the sun's radiation, a process called photodegradation. The entire surface of our planet is now being chemically burnt in this way. And because iron is one of the most abundant elements in the Earth's crust, the most visible result of this planetary chemical reaction is the formation of iron oxides, rust. This very process is the reason our planetary neighbour, Mars, is known as the Red Planet. Mars had a thicker, warmer atmosphere billions of years ago, but as it lost most of that atmosphere to space, its iron-rich surface was exposed to this same kind of long-term, slow-motion oxidation, giving it its characteristic, planet-wide, rusty red color. We are now witnessing, in a terrifyingly accelerated time frame, the very beginning of Earth's own transformation into a red planet. The familiar colors of our world, the deep blue of the living sea, the rich green of the chlorophyll-filled land, the soft grey of weathered rock, we see now that these were all transient chemical states, a delicate and beautiful balance maintained by the presence of our atmosphere. We are watching our world being repainted, molecule by molecule, into the colour of a long and silent death. And as this long, terrible day, finally, mercifully, begins to turn towards the final night, the planet, now a rusting, barren, and sterilized rock, will face a cold, deeper and more absolute than any it has ever known. As the Earth, in its silent, wounded state, continues its ancient and unwavering rotation, the long and terrible day finally begins to come to an end. But this is not a sunset, as any living thing has ever known it. There are no brilliant colours, no gentle fading twilight, no soft transition from the world of day into the world of night. There is only a line, a perfectly sharp, geometrically precise line of shadow, the Terminator, sweeping across the globe at over 1,000 miles an hour. On one side of this line is the brutal, unfiltered glare of the white sun. On the other side is the absolute, star-dusted blackness of deep space. You could stand on a plane and watch this wall of darkness approach, a silent, racing tsunami of night that consumes the landscape with visible speed. And as this razor-sharp shadow sweeps over you, the change is not just one of light, but of temperature, and it is a change so sudden and so absolute that it is difficult to comprehend. The moment the last sliver of the sun disappears below the horizon, the residual warmth that had been baked into the ground is unleashed. It does not linger. It does not create a mild evening. It radiates away, in an instant, into the infinite, cold emptiness of space. And behind this rushing wall of darkness comes a cold more profound and more penetrating than any polar winter, a cold that can freeze the very gases we once breathed. This gentle, lingering warmth of a normal evening, the soft twilight that bridges the gap between day and night, is one of the most beautiful and underappreciated gifts of our atmosphere. Throughout the day, the sun's energy warms not just the ground, but the thick blanket of air itself. When the sun sets, the ground begins to cool by radiating its heat away, but the atmosphere, particularly the greenhouse gases like water vapor and carbon dioxide, acts like a down comforter, trapping much of that escaping heat and re-radiating it back towards the surface. This is why our nights are not catastrophically cold, why the temperature drops slowly and gently, giving the world time to adjust. Twilight itself, that magical, painted hour, is the result of sunlight scattering off the air molecules high in the atmosphere, illuminating the world long after the sun has dipped below the horizon. But now, the blanket is gone. The air that held the day's warmth and scattered the evening's light has vanished. The moment direct sunlight is cut off, the surface of the planet has a direct, unimpeded line of sight to the coldest thing we know, the rest of the universe. The laws of thermodynamics dictate that heat will always flow from a warmer object to a colder object, until they reach a state of balance, a thermal equilibrium. The night side of the Earth is now a warm rock, desperately trying to reach thermal equilibrium with the near absolute zero background temperature of deep space. It is shedding its heat with astonishing speed, a final, planetary exhalation of warmth into the void. The temperature does not drop by 10 or 20 degrees. It plummets by hundreds of degrees in a matter of minutes, heading towards the background temperature of the cosmos, a state of cold, just 3 degrees above absolute zero, around negative 270 degrees Celsius. Twilight, we now understand, was a mercy. It was a gentle pause, a poetic and gradual transition between the two great states of our world. We are now left with only the brutal, unforgiving abruptness of the switch, from the fire of direct sunlight to the absolute ice of the void. And in this profound, this impossible and penetrating cold, the very last wisps of the water vapor that fled the oceans, the last remnants of the planet's ghost atmosphere still lingering in the near vacuum, will perform one final, beautiful, and ghostly dance in the starlight. As the wave of profound cold sweeps across the night side of the planet, the last vestiges of our world's water, which had been violently boiled into the void, now begin their final return. But they do not come back as rain, for there are no clouds to form, no atmospheric pressure to allow for the existence of a liquid droplet. They do not come back as snow, for that too is a process born of the complex weather systems of a living atmosphere. Instead, the last of the water vapor that fled the oceans now falls back to Earth as something far stranger, far more ethereal. It returns as a fine, glittering, and impossibly slow-falling dust of microscopic ice crystals. It is a phenomenon sometimes seen in the coldest polar regions of our world, known as diamond dust, but this is on a planetary scale. A silent, gentle, and unending fall of shimmering crystalline dust begins to descend from the blackness, blanketing the entire dead world in a thin, ghostly, and exquisitely beautiful shroud of frost. Under the sharp, unwavering light of the unveiled stars, the rusting, shattered surface of the earth begins to shimmer, as if it has been dusted with powdered diamonds. The silent, ruined cities, the wilted, skeletal forests, and the vast, dry basins of the former oceans are all slowly coated in this delicate, crystalline layer, a final, unifying blanket of ice that covers all the scars and all the ruin. The ground itself, already chilled to an incredible degree, now begins to freeze solid, not just on the surface, but for miles deep, a process of planetary permafrosting that will lock the world into a new and eternal state of geological stasis. This final, beautiful, and tragic precipitation is the result of a direct phase transition known as deposition. In our familiar, high-pressure world, water moves between its three states, solid, liquid, and gas in a familiar cycle. Ice melts into liquid water, and liquid water evaporates into gaseous vapor. Vapor condenses back into liquid clouds, which then rain down and can freeze back into ice. The liquid state is a common and stable intermediary. But under conditions of extremely low pressure and extremely low temperature, the rules of this dance change. The liquid phase of water becomes unstable and is skipped over entirely. In the near vacuum and incredible cold of the Earth's new night side, the individual water molecules still lingering in the void do not have the pressure or warmth to gather into liquid droplets. Instead, as they lose their last vestiges of thermal energy, they transform directly from a gas, the water vapor, into a solid, the ice crystal. It is the same process that forms the frost on a cold window pane on a winter's morning, or more grandly, the process by which the carbon dioxide and water ice of the polar caps on Mars are formed from its thin atmosphere. The phantom atmosphere of water vapor is being flash frozen out of existence, molecule by molecule, and deposited back onto the surface as a universal, shimmering frost. It is the final closing of the world's water cycle. The journey is over. The oceans that were born in the planet's fiery youth, that cradled the first life, that shaped the continents and governed the climate, have now completed their final act. They have boiled to the heavens, lingered for a moment as a ghost, and have now returned to entomb the world in a delicate, shining, and eternal layer of ice. The Earth is now a perfect, silent monument to the life that it once hosted. It has become a museum piece, a beautiful and tragic artifact, encased in a shimmering crystalline shell, floating in the endless, silent gallery of the dark. The surface of the planet is now, truly and finally, at rest. But what of the planet's own inner life? The slow, powerful, and relentless beat of its geological heart. In the face of this absolute and final freeze, will that, too, at long last, fall silent? Deep beneath the new, shimmering crust of ice that now entombs the world, a final and profound change begins to take hold. The familiar, deep rumble of the earth, the slow, patient groan of continents in motion, the sudden, violent shudder of an earthquake, the very heartbeat of the planet itself begins to fade into an eternal silence. For all of human history, we have lived on a restless, dynamic world, A world of rising mountains and drifting continents, of volcanic fire and seismic fury. We thought of this geological activity as a threat, a danger to be engineered against and feared. But we now learn that this restlessness was a sign of the planet's own deep geological life. And as the surface world has died, so too, in the fullness of time, will the deep inner life of the planet follow it into a final, placid stillness. The Earth's very heart, its geological engine, is falling silent. But before that final quiet, in the last hours of this impossible day, the planet would have offered one last unimaginable spasm of violence. The oceans of our world are incomprehensibly vast and heavy, trillions upon trillions of tons of water pressing down upon the thin, oceanic crust. This immense weight causes the crust to sag, to sit lower in the semi-molten mantle beneath it, in a state of gravitational balance known as isostatic equilibrium. When that immense, crushing weight of water was suddenly removed, boiled away into the void, the oceanic crust would have responded instantly. Freed from its burden, it would have sprung upwards, rebounding by hundreds or even thousands of feet in a matter of hours. This colossal isostatic rebound would have triggered earthquakes of a magnitude we can barely conceive, not on a single fault line, but across the entire seabed of the planet simultaneously. It would be the planet's final, agonizing convulsion before a long and quiet death. Following this last great cataclysm, the slow fading of the planet's inner life would begin. The engine of this life is plate tectonics, the grand, slow-motion ballet of the Earth's crustal plates, and one of the most crucial, yet underappreciated, ingredients for this process is water. At the great subduction zones, where one oceanic plate dives beneath another, it carries with it vast quantities of water, locked into the minerals of the crust. This water acts as a flux, a lubricant, lowering the melting point of the rock in the mantle and allowing the geological churn to continue. You can imagine it as trying to slide two pieces of rough, dry sandpaper against each other. They catch and grind and resist. But if you wet the sandpaper, they slide against each other far more easily. Water is the lubricant for the world's geological engine. With the oceans gone and the planet's surface water lost to space, this vital lubrication would eventually be cut off. Over the vast expanse of geological time, the plates would slow, the great engine of tectonics would grind with more and more friction, and perhaps, one distant day, it would seize up and stop altogether. The planet is a living entity, not merely in a biological sense, but in a geological one. Its atmosphere was its breath, its water was its lifeblood, and its slow, patient, and powerful tectonics were its heartbeat. We have now witnessed the end of that breath, the spilling of that blood, and the final, fading beats of that ancient rocky heart. And so, a single, impossible day finally ends. A new Earth, a silent, rusted, frozen, and geologically still Earth, now drifts onward into the endless night. And from a great distance, from the quiet and lonely orbit of the moon, what is left to see? What is the final image, the last memory of our home? From a great distance, from the silent, cratered plains of the moon, what would a traveller, perhaps returning home after a long journey, see now? Where they expected to see a vibrant, swirling jewel of brilliant blue and soft, cloudy white, a beacon of life in the vast, dark emptiness, they would find something else entirely. The blue marble is gone. In its place hangs a stark and quiet and terribly lonely sphere. It is a world of harsh, unfamiliar colours. A dark, reddish-brown, where the iron-rich continents have begun to rust. A deep, dark grey, where the empty ocean basins now lie exposed to the unfiltered starlight. It is a world of brutal contrast, half of it in the sharp white glare of the sun, the other half in a blackness so complete it seems to merge with the void that surrounds it. Perhaps, if the light catches it just right, the planet might have a faint, ghostly shimmer, the delicate, crystalline sheen of the diamond dust that now coats its entire surface. It looks, now, more like a twin to Mars, a silent, ochre world, a monument to a life that was. There are no city lights that glitter on its night side. There are no clouds that swirl in its sky. There is only a profound and terrible stillness, the stillness of a home that has become a tomb. From this cosmic vantage point, we can now watch the entire, terrible story of this day unfold in a silent, time-lapsed film. We would have seen the brilliant, vibrant blue of the deep oceans, our planet's defining feature, slowly fade and then vanish as the water boiled away to reveal the dark, hidden topography of the seabed. We would have seen the soft, ever-changing patterns of the white clouds, the breath of the water cycle made visible, thin out and then disappear completely, leaving the planet stark and naked. We would have seen the rich, deep greens of the great rainforests and the golden tans of the grasslands slowly turn to a uniform, sickly brown, and then begin their slow, inexorable shift to a rusty, alien red. We would have seen the planet lose its soft, fuzzy edge, its atmospheric halo, and become a sharp, hard-edged ball of rock. We would have witnessed the final, faint, ghostly shimmer as the last of its water returned to encase it in a shell of ice. In watching this, we would be struck by the most profound realization of all, the extraordinary, miraculous rarity of what has been lost. Our world is not just special, it may be the most precious and complex object we will ever know. We live in what astronomers call the Goldilocks zone, the narrow, perfect orbital band around our star where the temperature is just right, not too hot and not too cold, for liquid water to exist on the surface. But this is only the first of many ingredients. A planet must also have enough mass, enough gravity, to hold onto a thick, life-giving atmosphere over billions of years. It must have a molten, metallic core to generate a powerful magnetic field, a shield to protect that atmosphere from being stripped away by the solar wind. And it must have an active, living geology, a system of volcanoes and tectonics to recycle nutrients and replenish the gases of the atmosphere over eons. The fact that our Earth has all of these things, in the perfect combination, is a miracle of such staggering improbability that it humbles the mind. The atmosphere, we finally understand, is not something that is simply on the Earth, like a coat that it wears. The atmosphere is the Earth. It is the living, breathing, and most vital organ of a vast, interconnected, planetary-scale organism. Its loss is a reminder that our home is not a rock. It is a delicate, miraculous, and perhaps unique relationship between rock and water and gas, a relationship that gave birth to consciousness, to love, to poetry, and to the simple, profound joy of looking up at a blue sky. I hope this journey has been a soothing one for you. I hope it has brought you a sense of quiet and wonder, and perhaps a new and deeper appreciation for the silent, invisible miracle that surrounds us every moment of our lives. When you wake tomorrow, perhaps you will take a moment to simply breathe, to feel the gentle, substantial pressure of the air on your skin, to listen to the sounds that travel on its currents, to look up at the soft blue veil that holds the entire world in its tender and precious embrace. Thank you for listening. And if you have found some peace here, I hope you will join me again for another gentle, soothing story. Until then, sleep well.